Well, hello everybody. My name is Jeff Weisenberger. I'm the senior editor of Modern Steel Construction magazine. Welcome to the first Modern Steel Construction podcast. I am here with Bill Bast of Thornton Tomasetti. He is the head of the forensics and renewal practices here in Chicago. I did want to start off with a little bit about your background. First of all, tell me where you're from originally.
So I grew up in Emmaus, Pennsylvania.
Okay.
And went to Lehigh University in Bethlehem, Pennsylvania, not too far away.
Okay. Now, when it comes to structural engineering, you went to Lehigh. Is this something that was this your first, when I grow up, I want to be, or rather, how did you decide to become a structural engineer?
My dad was a structural engineer for the local power utility, and I enjoyed hearing his stories about what he did, and thought that he had a great work and life balance with his career, and I was good in math and science.
That helps.
And so I leaned toward engineering when I was looking at colleges, and started in civil. I entertained going to metallurgical and material science at one point, but went back to civil and stayed there and got a master's from Lehigh as well.
Okay, excellent.
I graduated Lehigh with a bachelor's degree in civil engineering and became a team manager for Procter & Gamble paper products, making Pampers diapers in northeastern Pennsylvania.
Wow. It's a little bit removed.
It's definitely removed. I was interested in the management aspects of things. They paid very well, and it was very good management training for me, and a lot of what I learned 40 years ago in that job, I apply today in what I do here at Thornton Tomasetti.
Okay, that's excellent to hear. So on that note, what brought you to Chicago then?
In 1983, I was offered a position at Skidmore, Owings & Merrill, and came to Chicago. I never thought about moving to Chicago. I actually wanted to go to California.
Okay. You wanted to go warmer, not colder.
Yeah. And I didn't know much about Chicago, but everyone I talked to spoke so highly about their experiences in Chicago that I looked at it and I just thought it would be a great place. It was a very exciting place. It seemed much more livable than New York, and yet, such a great place for architecture and structural engineering.
Okay, excellent. Now, speaking of some of those lessons you learned from years ago that you still apply today, you are the head of the forensics and renewal practices here at Thornton Tomasetti. Can you talk a little bit about that and how those two practices are related?
Yes, so I do both. I practice forensic engineering, which is studying collapses and problems with buildings, as well as serving as an expert witness. And I also work in the renewal practice, which, as we define it, is working on existing buildings. So I always think of structural engineering the way I learned it at Lehigh as a spectrum, with forensics on one end of the spectrum and design on the other end of the spectrum. And research and education all mixed up, and that one informs the other. So when you're designing and something bad happens, the codes change and you become a better designer. And having seen problems in the field, in the forensic way of things, you also become a better designer. And the design also informs the forensics, understanding how a structure should behave or should respond, and compare it to what exactly did happen.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about the current Willis Tower project. So you're involved with that, obviously. Now, the current project, and it sounds like you worked a little bit. You worked on a renovation in the past as well, and then going back from there, your mentor, John Zills, was one of the designers of the original tower. So can you talk a little bit about maybe that time flow, so to speak?
Sure. So Fazler Khan was the chief structural engineer at SOM in the early 70s when Sears Tower was under design. John Zills and Hal Iyengar were project engineers under FOZ. And the job was completed in 1974. One of the early jobs I worked on in my career at SOM was the Sears Tower revitalization project. That was about a $25 million job where we put a new barrel vault entrance on the west side of the building and a winter garden type of structure on the inside of that. And John and Hal were both involved in that renovation. I worked with Bill Baker, who's the principal at, or the partner at SOM now, and he was the project engineer on the job, and I was the engineer working on that. So that was in 1985, and now, 30-some years later, we're tearing that entrance off the building as well as the other entrances and building a 4-story podium out to the curb line to create a new retail experience at Sears and Willis.
Sure. That's interesting. I don't know if I've really heard that before, a scenario where someone designed a renovation to a building or even designed a building and then later went back and completely rethought or was involved in rethinking an entrance like that.
Mm-hmm.
That's pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm old enough now that my original designs are getting torn down, but it is a little unique to be able to tear it down and rebuild it at the same time. So.
Right, excellent. Well, so you say that John is one of your mentors. Do you have, is there anything you can share as far as things that you've learned from him over the years, you know, from the beginning or even still now?
Well, he has been a great mentor over the time of my career. He gave a lot of wisdom to so many of us, and a couple things maybe one thing at least I remember I can recall with John was talking about little projects. Mm-hmm. Not every job is Sears Tower.
Very true.
So what about little projects? You know, what makes them exciting? What makes them different? And he used to say there's always something there that is unique or special. It's your job to find it.
Sure.
And another thing that he said to me when we were talking one time about the Hajj terminal in Saudi Arabia that Skidmore did, that when Skidmore undertook that job, they had never designed a fabric tensile structure before, but they worked with Geiger Berger on that job to create that design. And John said, you know, you don't have to be the expert on the project at the start of the project, but you better be the expert at the end of it. So he had a lot of good words of wisdom like that, and he's had great words of wisdom from me over my career, and things, you know, even talking about salaries and titles and things like that, and his perspective on those, where he would usually say that the most important thing is your work and the projects, that they're exciting and they challenge you, and that's more important than the money you're making or the title that you might hold. Okay.
No, that's very sound advice. I was curious about some of the other projects you've worked on. Do you mind talking a little bit about the U-505 submarine relocation project?
Sure. We got involved in that project early on to look at new enclosure and venue for the submarine. Came up with a few scenarios, and then they swapped out the entire design team for a new one to execute the below-grade one north of the East Pavilion. And at the time, we had interviewed a few movers of the U-505. There were really two categories of movers. One type was a building mover, and the other type was an equipment mover.
Okay.
And we ended up recommending Itelco, was their name, from Seattle at the time. They moved a lot of ships and were in that industry. And So later on, when the job was being executed, they brought us back in to oversee the submarine move, even though we hadn't done the final design, but we were now being asked to oversee the move. And so we worked closely with the contractor to ensure that the move would be done safely, and that all the equipment that he was using and the different structural components would work for carrying some pretty heavy loads, including the 900-ton submarine itself.
900 tons. Yeah, I'd always wondered how much it weighed. It's quite a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
Any other recent projects that were most interesting to you? Maybe something not as marquee or is the submarine or as immense as Willis Tower.
Well, the two that come to mind are Navy Pier and Wrigley Field, actually. So Navy Pier I worked on 25 years ago, and we completed that in 1995. Actually, it was more than that. That job I worked on when I was at Rubinos and Messia Engineers, and we worked on the project, which is about $175 million job at the time, and included the Ferris wheel and the festival hall and the family pavilion and other things that are out there. And now, 30-some years later, we're back out there and did the new Ferris wheel, the new Shakespeare Theater, and a lot of the other projects that are going on out at the pier. So I've been very fortunate to be involved in both of those over the span of that many years. And then our firm has been leading the structural engineering for Wrigley Field renovations, which started in around 2013, and we're hoping to finish it this year in 2019. Right. And that was a very challenging project involving all kinds of foundation and engineering aspects, and working with an existing building built, and rebuilt over the years since 1914, to come up with solutions that were economically viable.
Sure.
And would work.
Right. Yeah. That neighborhood, that whole area has really transformed.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, well, let's, stepping away from engineering briefly, I understand that you are a drummer.
I am.
How did you become a drummer?
Actually, I auditioned for it in 5th grade.
So this was like school band?
Yeah, school band, and had to listen to the instructor tap out a rhythm and then try to replicate it.
Okay.
And he said, yeah, you have aptitude for drums. And so I went into playing concert band and then marching band in junior high and then early high school. And then I stopped for about 25 years or so.
Wow.
And then I got interested again when I was going to a contemporary Christian church, and they had a full rock band up on the stage with a drum kit. I never played a drum kit, but I decided to buy one and teach myself how to play it. And about 6 months later, I was asked to play, and that was about 12 years ago, and I've been doing that ever since. So
when you're teaching yourself the drums, is it trying to find the rhythm with one limb, then adding another, then adding another, and then adding another? Or?
Yeah, that works, and it's a lot of practice. And if you can disconnect all 4 limbs, that works pretty well. I'm not as good at it as so many other really good drummers who really can play different rhythms with each of the limbs.
Right.
I'm not quite there, but I can get by.
Good. Yeah, very good. Do you have any drumming heroes? Any inspiration out there?
Well, I like Phil Collins and Mick Fleetwood and Jeff Porcaro. Mm-hmm. We're all great drummers, and Russ Kunkel and some others. So I enjoy music really of all kinds, and from country and western to rock and pop and the contemporary Christian stuff as well. Okay.
And you said you play in your church?
I do.
Church.
Yeah.
Okay. Excellent. And do you do any other side gigs, so to speak? Do you have any other outlets?
Actually, a few years ago, we formed a band here at Thornton Tomasetti.
Okay.
And a couple years ago, we named it Lev Zeppelin, sounding like the Led Zeppelin band, but Lev Zeppelin being the name of the founder of our firm, actually. So it's maintains that name, and I played a couple gigs. It was the first time I was actually paid.
Wow.
When I played in some dive bar in Logan Square, and I think I got $12 for the night.
You know, it's something. It's at least a couple of beers, I guess.
So I haven't quit my day job yet.
Okay. Did you play any Led Zeppelin cover songs?
I think we did. I don't remember which one, but I think we did, yeah.
Very good. Well, I think that's about it for us, so thank you very much, Bill. I really appreciate your time.
Thank you, Jeff.